doing here? Get out of here! Get out of here! Don't spoil my marriage! Not today, please, Ekab. No, please, Ekab, not today! Get out! Not today!
I bind you two, husband and wife. Oh wait, I almost forgot.
If anyone has anything to say against this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The pastor looked across the room. Nobody moved. Rachel stood beside Moses, smiling. Moses looked happier than I had ever seen him. Then the doors opened. Every head turned, including mine. I stood there in the doorway, still wearing the clothes I had left the hospital in, a bandage wrapped around my head, an IV line taped to my hand, a medical bracelet around my wrist. My legs were weak. My vision still wasn't completely clear, but I could see one thing perfectly. Rachel, standing beside my best friend in a wedding dress. I took one step forward. Rachel's face changed. Moses froze. The pastor slowly lowered his microphone. Nobody said a word. Then Moses walked toward me. Ekab. I looked at him. For a moment, I wanted to believe there was an explanation. There had to be. There had to be something I didn't know. But then Rachel finally spoke. Why are you here? That question broke something inside me. Not because she asked it, because of the way she asked it. Like I was the one who had interrupted something. Like I was the stranger. I looked at Moses. He couldn't even meet my eyes. And that's when I realized I hadn't come back to my life. I had come back to a life that had already moved on without me. But there was something neither Rachel nor Moses knew. The man they thought they were leaving behind had never been as ordinary as they believed. And the reason I had lived an ordinary life wasn't because my family was poor. It was because my father had spent years hiding me from the world. Long before Rachel, long before Moses, long before that wedding, someone had tried to steal me from my family. And that one incident changed everything. Let me take you back. To support the channel, you can visit our store and check our new product around. It's designed to help you pause, understand what's really happening in your relationship, and make clearer decisions instead of reacting in the heat of the moment. There's no one telling you what decision to make. You work through it yourself. The link is in the description. Let's get back to today's story. I was 8 years old when my father stopped letting me use his name. I didn't understand it at first. One day, I was his son. The next, I was being introduced using my mother's surname. New school, new neighborhood, new phone number, new life. My father didn't explain much. Whenever I asked why, he gave me the same answer. Because sometimes people don't need to know everything about you. I thought he was being dramatic. Until I remembered the day my mother cried. She had never cried in front of me before. That day, she couldn't stop. My father stood beside her, staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. Later, I learned someone had tried to kidnap me. They weren't interested in me because I was special. They were interested in who my father was. That was the first lesson my father ever taught me about money. Money doesn't only attract people who want to help you. Sometimes it attracts people who want something from you. So my father disappeared from my daily life. Not completely, but enough. He watched from a distance, paid for my education without letting me know where the money came from, called occasionally, visited when he could, and every time I asked when I could come home, he told me the same thing. When you're ready. I hated that answer. For years, I thought he was keeping me away because he didn't want me around. I didn't realize he was waiting for me to become the kind of man who could survive without him, and that's how I grew up. Quietly, normally, at least as normal as my life could be. Then I met Moses. We were teenagers. He was loud, funny, fearless, the kind of guy who could turn an awkward room into a party in 5 minutes. I was quieter. He talked. I listened. He acted. I thought. Somehow, it worked. By university, we were inseparable. People stopped calling us friends. They called us brothers, and I believed it. Then Rachel came into our lives. Moses noticed her first. He never admitted it. But I knew. Eventually, Rachel and I started dating. Moses congratulated us. He even pulled me aside one evening. "Don't mess this up, brother." I laughed. "I won't." He smiled. Good. At the time, I thought he was protecting our friendship. I didn't know how many times I would replay that conversation later. After university, our lives started moving in different directions. Moses found opportunities quickly. One job became another. Then came a promotion. Then another. He had an uncle who seemed to know everyone. Every time one door closed, another one opened for him. I was happy for him. But Rachel started noticing. At first she only mentioned it casually. Moses got promoted again. That's good. You should learn from him. I laughed. I am happy for him. She didn't laugh. You always say that. Because I am. She looked away. Then came the question. Ekab, where are you going? I didn't understand. What do you mean? You're always waiting. She said. Waiting for what? I asked, looking confused. She sighed. I don't know. That answer bothered me, because I knew exactly what I was waiting for, my father. He had told me my entire life that one day I would understand why he had kept me away. But that day hadn't come. Not yet. Then one evening, my phone rang. It was him, my father. We hadn't spoken in weeks. I answered immediately. Dad? His voice was unusually quiet. Ekab. Is everything okay? Yes. A pause. Then he asked, Are you still with Rachel? I smiled. Yeah. Do you love her? The question caught me off guard. Of course. Another silence. Then he said, Good. I frowned. Why are you asking me that? You'll understand soon. Understand what? He didn't answer. Dad? I called. Then he finally said something that made no sense at that time. Or so I thought. I need you to remember something. What? I asked. No matter what happens, he continued, don't let someone else's expectations decide who you become. Then the call ended. I stared at my phone. I didn't understand what he meant. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. And it wasn't about Rachel. It wasn't about Moses. It was about me. A few days later, Rachel and I had our worst argument yet. She stood across from me with tears in her eyes. I can't keep waiting forever, Ekab. I never asked you to wait forever, I replied. Then she continued. Then what are you asking me to do? I just need time, I added. You always need time. I went quiet. She looked at me, then said something that stayed with me. I don't want to build a future with someone who doesn't even know where his own life is going. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to tell her that my life had a future she couldn't even imagine, that my father had plans for me, that there was a reason I had been kept away from his world. But I couldn't, not yet. So I simply said, I love you. She wiped her tears. I know. Then she walked away. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. For the first time, I wondered whether waiting for my father had cost me too much. I didn't know that question would soon become irrelevant. Because the next morning, my father called again. This time, his voice sounded different, urgent. Ekab. Yes, Dad? Where are you? I'm home. Don't leave. I sat up, a pause. Then, I need to tell you something. What? He breathed slowly. It's time you came home. I froze. For the first time in my life, my father wasn't asking me to wait. He was telling me. It was time. I didn't know what he wanted to show me. I didn't know what he had been preparing all these years, and I certainly didn't know that before I could reach him, my life was about to change forever. Because that afternoon, it started raining, and I got behind the wheel. I still remember the last message Rachel sent me before I left. We need to talk. I smiled at the screen. I thought I was driving toward an answer. I had no idea. I was driving straight toward the moment that would take everything away from me. The rain had gotten heavier by the time I reached the highway. I kept thinking about my father's voice. It's time you came home. I had heard him say many things over the years. That was different. He sounded like a man who had finally run out of time. I called him back. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I looked at the road ahead and slowed down. Something about the whole thing felt strange. My father never ignored my calls. Not once. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Nothing. I looked at the screen. The call had already ended. I called back. The number was unavailable. I almost laughed. Okay. I placed the phone beside me and kept driving. I had no idea that someone else was already watching the same road. Someone who knew exactly where I was going. Someone who had been waiting years for me to come home. And I didn't know that my father's decision to bring me back had already caused a problem inside his company. Because apparently, I wasn't the only person who knew I was coming. My father was the CEO of Meridian Crown Holdings. I didn't know the full size of the company. I knew the name. I knew it was successful. I knew my father was wealthy, but I had never been allowed to live inside that world. What I didn't know was that my father had recently made a decision that terrified some of the people around him. He had started preparing to transfer control, not to a board member, not to one of his executives, to me. And only a few people knew. One of them was the company's chief legal advisor. Another was the head of finance. And another was the man sitting beside my father's driver that afternoon. His name was Victor Hale. For years, Victor had been one of my father's most trusted executives. He knew the company's structure. He knew which shares belonged to whom. He knew which decisions required my father's approval. And more importantly, he knew what would happen if my father was no longer there to stop him. That was why my father's call to me had frightened him. Victor had spent years building influence inside Meridian Crown. He wasn't trying to destroy the company. He wanted something much simpler. He wanted to own it, and for a while, he thought he had enough time. Then my father told him something he wasn't expecting. "My son is coming home." Victor didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at him. "Your son?" My father nodded. "Yes." Victor lowered his eyes. "After all these years? Why now?" My father looked at him. "Because it's time." That was all he said. But Victor understood exactly what it meant. If I came home, everything he had been building could disappear. My father still controlled the largest block of shares, and if those shares eventually came to me, Victor's plan would be over before it started. So he made a phone call, and that phone call had nothing to do with business. I knew none of this. All I knew was that I was driving through heavy rain to meet the father I had spent most of my life trying to understand. I kept replaying Rachel's message. "We need to talk." I wondered what she wanted. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she wanted to end things. Maybe she wanted to tell me something important. I honestly didn't know anymore. Then my phone rang again. This time it was my father. I answered immediately. "Dad." His voice came through weakly. "Ekab, where are you?" "I'm almost there." "Don't take the main road," he said with a shaky voice. I frowned. "Why, Dad?" "Just listen to me." There was something in his voice. Not fear exactly, urgency. "Take the next exit." "Dad, what's happening?" "Ekab." He stopped, then said quietly, "Someone knows you're coming." I looked at the road. "What?" The call cut off. "Dad?" "Nothing." I called again. No answer. I tried 3 more times. Nothing. I slowed the car. For the first time, I wondered whether I should turn around. Then I saw a vehicle behind me. Black. No headlights. It stayed far enough back that I couldn't see the driver. I changed lanes. It changed lanes too. I took the next exit. It followed. I told myself it was a coincidence. I took another turn. It followed again. That's when I reached for my phone. Before I could call anyone, the road ahead suddenly became unclear. A vehicle came across the intersection. Too fast. I hit the brakes. The tires slipped. The steering wheel pulled hard to one side, and then everything happened at once. Metal, glass, rain, a violent impact. My head hit something. The world spun. I heard a horn. Then another sound. A door opening. Someone shouting. Then nothing. When I woke up, I didn't know where I was. There was a ceiling above me. White, bright, unfamiliar. Someone was speaking. "Can you hear me?" I tried to answer. Nothing came out. I heard another voice. He's responding. Then everything disappeared again. The doctors called it a severe head injury. They said I was lucky. Lucky. That word would make me angry later, because I would eventually learn that the crash wasn't bad luck. It wasn't an unfortunate accident, and the person who caused it hadn't intended for me to wake up. But nobody told me that yet. Not even my father. Because while I was lying unconscious, my father was fighting a completely different battle. The boardroom at Meridian Crown was almost empty. Victor stood near the window. Across from him sat the company's chief financial officer. "You said the boy was on his way." "He was." "And," Victor looked at his phone, then said, "there was an accident." The CFO went silent. "Is he dead?" Victor didn't answer immediately. Finally he said, "We don't know." "That isn't what you told me. The CFO said I told you what I knew." Victor replied. The CFO lowered his voice. "If he survives," Victor turned toward him, "then we deal with that when it happens. But if he survives, your plan is finished." Victor looked through the glass wall toward the city. "No," he paused. "If he survives, then we change the plan." I remained unconscious for days, then weeks. Rachel came to the hospital. Moses came too, at least that's what I was told later. I couldn't see any of it. I was somewhere between sleep and nothing. But there was one thing that kept happening. My father came every night. He would sit beside my bed. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he talked to me like I could hear him. One night he held my hand and whispered, I should have told you everything sooner." He stopped, then added, "I thought keeping you away would keep you safe." His voice cracked, but I was wrong. He didn't know that one day I would remember those words. Not all of them, just pieces, fragments, enough to make me question everything. Because there was something else I heard that night. Two men talking outside the room. One of them said if he wakes up, the shares become a problem. The other replied, then he can't be allowed to take control. I tried to move. I couldn't. I tried to open my eyes. Nothing. Then someone entered the room, the voices stopped, and everything went dark again. Months passed. My father kept working, the board kept meeting, Victor kept smiling, and Rachel kept waiting. Or at least, that's what I would eventually be told. But while I was lying in that hospital bed, the world outside had already started changing. Moses was getting closer to Rachel. Rachel was getting tired of waiting for me. And Victor was getting closer to controlling the company. 3 different lives were moving toward the same moment. I just didn't know it yet. Then one morning, I opened my eyes. This time, I stayed awake. A nurse called for the doctor. People rushed into the room, questions, tests, lights, voices. I didn't understand how long I had been gone. Then I asked the first question that mattered. My father. The nurse looked at me. He's been coming every day. I closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I smiled. I thought I was finally going home, but then the doctor looked at me and said something that changed the way I saw the entire situation. "You've been unconscious for a very long time." "How long?" The doctor hesitated. "Long enough?" He stopped, then continued. "Long enough for a lot to change." I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet, because there was another question waiting for me. One nobody wanted to answer. "What happened to the accident?" The room went quiet. The doctor looked at the nurse. The nurse looked away. And finally, the doctor said, "The police are still investigating." I stared at him. "Why?" He didn't answer. And that was when I knew the crash wasn't the only thing I had to worry about. Someone had tried to stop me from reaching my father, and whoever it was had a reason to make sure I never reached him alive. I just didn't know their name yet. But I was about to learn it. And by the time I did, my father wouldn't be the only person waiting for me. Rachel would be waiting too, and she wouldn't be waiting alone. The first thing I asked for when I left the hospital was my father. The second thing was Rachel. Neither answer came the way I expected. My father arrived first. He walked into my room wearing the same expression I remembered from childhood, calm, controlled, like nothing in the world could ever shake him. But when he saw me standing, he stopped. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he pulled me into his arms. I had almost forgotten what that felt like. "You're really awake," he whispered. I laughed quietly. "I think so," he smiled, but there was something behind it. Something he wasn't telling me. I noticed it immediately. "Dad?" He looked at me. "What happened?" He knew exactly what I meant. The accident, the hospital, the strange things I had overheard. He looked away. "Not here." That answer bothered me. But before I could push him, he said something that confused me even more. "You're coming home with me." I frowned. "Home?" "Yes." Then he looked directly into my eyes. "And this time, Ekab, you're going to learn why I kept you away from everything." I didn't understand, but I agreed. Because after months of waking up to white walls, I wanted my life back. I wanted my old room, my old friends, my old routines. Most importantly, I wanted Rachel. I had spent months imagining the moment I would finally see her again. I imagined her crying. I imagined her hugging me. I imagined her telling me she had waited. I had no idea how wrong I was. My father's car was waiting outside. The driver opened the door. I stepped inside. The city looked different. Or maybe I was the one who had changed. Buildings seemed taller. People moved faster. Everything felt strangely unfamiliar. Then my father handed me a folder. I looked at it. "What is this?" "Your education." I opened it. Accounting, finance, corporate management, business law, investment strategy. I looked at him. "Why are you giving me this?" He leaned back. "Because you're going to need it." "For what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked out the window, and that was when I noticed the car wasn't taking us home. It was heading toward Meridian Crown, my father's company. I had seen the building before, but never like this. Security opened the gates before we even reached them. Employees stopped walking. People turned. Some stared at me. Others whispered. My father noticed. Don't pay attention to them. Why are they looking at me? He gave me a small smile. You'll understand soon. That became the sentence I heard most from my father. You'll understand soon. I was beginning to hate it. The doors opened, we stepped into the lobby, and suddenly the whispers became louder. That's him. He's alive? I thought. The voices stopped when my father looked toward them. Nobody said another word. I followed him toward the elevators. Then I saw a man standing near the reception desk, Victor Hale. He looked at my father, then at me. For half a second, his face changed. Not much, just enough, surprise. Then fear. Then the smile returned. Mr. Pierce, he said. My father nodded. Victor turned toward me. It's good to finally meet you. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, too firm. He looked at me as if he were trying to memorize my face. I didn't know why, but something about him made the back of my neck tighten. My father noticed. He stepped between us. Come. We entered the elevator. The doors closed. My father waited until we were alone. Stay away from Victor. I looked at him. Why? He stared straight ahead because I don't trust him. That was the first honest answer he'd given me, and somehow it scared me more than the accident. That evening, I finally went to see Rachel. I had rehearsed what I was going to say, everything I had wanted to tell her, how much I missed her, how many times I had thought about her while I was unconscious, how I believed she was the one thing waiting for me when I woke up. I reached her apartment, knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, still nothing. Then I noticed something, a second pair of shoes outside the door. Men's shoes. I stood there for a moment. Then I heard laughter inside, Rachel's laughter and another man's voice. I knew that voice. Moses, my best friend. I knocked again. The laughter stopped. The door opened. Rachel stood there. She stared at me. Neither of us moved. Then she whispered my name. Ekab. I smiled. Hi. She didn't hug me. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing was the ring on her finger. I looked down, then back at her. What's that? She swallowed. Ekab. Moses appeared behind her. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had, because I was supposed to still be lying in that hospital bed. He stepped forward. Brother. I looked at him, then at Rachel, then at the ring again. What is going on? Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Moses did. Ekab. He took a breath. I wanted to tell you. Tell me what? Silence. Then Rachel said it. We got married. I stared at her. For a moment, I genuinely couldn't hear anything else. Months of darkness, months of pain, months of believing I had something to come back to, and somehow, while I was fighting to wake up, my life had continued without me. I looked at Moses. He couldn't meet my eyes. Congratulations. Rachel started crying. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. Then what is it? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I looked at Moses. He finally raised his eyes, and the disappointment on his face told me something important. He wasn't proud of what had happened. That didn't make it hurt less. I stepped backward. Take care of her. Moses moved toward me. Ekab, wait. I raised my hand. Not tonight. I walked away, and for the first time since waking up, I understood what the doctor meant. A lot had changed. I just hadn't realized how much. 3 weeks later, I was standing in my father's office. He placed another folder on the desk. I didn't open it. What's this? Your inheritance. I laughed. I don't need money right now. This isn't about money. He opened the folder himself. Inside were documents, share certificates, ownership structures, board resolutions, names I recognized, numbers I didn't. Then he looked at me. Everything you're looking at will belong to you. I stared at him. What? He sat down. You are my only son. I know. No. His voice became serious. You don't know. He pointed toward the documents. This company isn't simply something I built for you to enjoy. He paused. It's something I built because one day you would have to protect it. I looked at him. And the accident? His face changed. There it was again, that silence, that hesitation. Finally he said, someone knew you were coming. My stomach tightened. Who? We're still investigating. Victor? My father didn't answer. That was enough. I stood up. I want to know everything. You will. When? When you're ready. I stared at him. I've already lost months of my life. I picked up the folder. I think I've waited long enough. He watched me leave, but as I reached the door, he said one thing. Ekab. I turned. If anyone from the board approaches you, don't trust them. I nodded, then walked out. I didn't know it yet, but someone on that board was already making a move. And it wasn't against my father anymore. It was against me. That same week, Rachel called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Hello? She was crying. Ekab, I need to see you. Why? I need to explain. I closed my eyes. I should have said no. Instead, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe. She looked different, tired, unhappy. She reached across the table. I made a mistake. I looked at her hand. The ring was gone. Where's your husband? She looked down. Moses and I. She stopped. We're not okay. I said nothing. She continued. I thought I had moved on. And? She looked into my eyes. I hadn't. That sentence should have made me happy. It didn't, because there was something else happening in my life now. Something bigger than Rachel, bigger than Moses, bigger than the company. Someone had tried to kill me before I ever knew what I was supposed to inherit. And now, someone inside my father's company knew I had survived. I left the cafe without giving Rachel an answer. As I walked toward my car, my phone vibrated. One message. No name, just 4 words. You should have stayed asleep. I stopped walking. Read it again, and suddenly, the accident wasn't in my past anymore. It was coming back for me. The message stayed on my phone all night. You should have stayed asleep. I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid, because for the first time, I wanted answers more than I wanted peace. The next morning, I walked into my father's office before anyone expected me. He was already there, and when he saw my face, he knew. You received something. I placed my phone on his desk. He read the message. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. You know who sent it? I asked. I have a suspicion. Victor? He didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a file. He placed it between us. Before your accident, he said, I discovered someone had been moving company shares through shell companies. I opened the file. Names, transactions, transfers, companies I'd never heard of. Then I saw something familiar. Victor Hale. I looked up. How much? Enough to become dangerous. My father's voice was quiet. He wasn't trying to steal money. He paused. He was trying to take control. I stared at the documents. So the accident? We don't know yet. That answer wasn't good enough, but before I could push him, the office door opened. Victor walked in. He stopped when he saw me. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. Ekab. I smiled back. Victor. My father closed the file. Victor noticed. Of course he did. Am I interrupting? No, my father said. You're leaving. Victor's smile disappeared for half a second, then returned. Of course. He walked out. I watched the door close behind him. My father looked at me. Now you understand why I told you not to trust him. I nodded, but something bothered me. If Victor was trying to take the company, why had he waited until now? Then I remembered the message. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd been waiting for me to wake up. 2 days later, my father called an emergency board meeting. Every major shareholder was there. Victor sat near the end of the table. I sat beside my father. Nobody introduced me. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew who I was. My father stood. For years I've protected my son's identity. A few board members exchanged looks. Today that ends. He placed a document on the table. Ekab Pierce is the legal heir to my controlling interest. Silence, real silence, the kind that changes the temperature in a room. Victor leaned back. Is that wise? My father looked at him. That's not your decision. Victor smiled. Of course. Then he looked at me. So you're finally taking over? I didn't answer. He continued. You've been away for a long time. I have. Do you understand this company? No. A few people smiled. I looked directly at Victor. But I'm learning. His smile faded. My father sat down, and the meeting continued. For the first time, I wasn't the hidden son anymore. I was the person standing between Victor and everything he wanted. That evening, my father gave me access to the company's internal records. I spent hours going through them. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. Victor wasn't working alone. Someone had been feeding him information from inside the company. Someone had given him access to private schedules. Someone had known when I was leaving. Someone had known the route I was taking before the accident. I froze. Then I found something. A maintenance report, a vehicle inspection, a signature, the driver's signature. I recognized the name, the same driver who had taken me to the hospital. I immediately called my father. Dad, what's wrong? I found the driver. Silence. What about him? He wasn't supposed to be on duty the day of my accident. Another silence. Then my father's voice changed. Stay where you are. I need to. Ekab. He sounded different now. Do not leave that office. But it was already too late, because the office lights suddenly went out. I stood still. The entire floor went dark. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Careful. I turned. Nothing. Then my phone lit up. Another message. You were warned. I backed away from the door. And then the lights came back on. Nobody was there, except for one thing. The folder I'd been reading was gone. The next morning, my father confronted the driver. He denied everything, until investigators found the payment, a transfer from one of Victor's shell companies. The driver broke almost immediately. He admitted he had been paid to alter the vehicle, but when my father asked who ordered it, he gave them a name. Victor. My father didn't hesitate. Security escorted Victor from the building. For the first time, I saw the man who had seemed untouchable look afraid, but Victor didn't fight. He simply looked at me and smiled. That smile bothered me more than his threats, because a man who has just lost everything shouldn't look that confident, unless he knows something you don't. That afternoon, my father came into my office. "It's over," he said. I looked up. "Victor? He's being arrested." I nodded. Then he placed another document on my desk. "There's one more thing." I opened it. Victor had transferred several shares to another company shortly before his arrest. My father's expression hardened. He wasn't trying to become CEO. I looked at him. Then what was he trying to do? My father answered quietly. He was trying to make sure whoever became CEO inherited a company already weakened from the inside. I stared at the document. That meant Victor had planned beyond himself. Someone else was supposed to benefit. But who? Before I could ask, my father smiled faintly. "That's tomorrow's problem." For once, I didn't argue, because there was another problem waiting for me. Rachel. I hadn't spoken to her since the cafe. Then she appeared outside my office. She looked exhausted. I heard what happened. I nodded. "It's all over the news." "I'm sorry." "For what?" She looked at me. "For everything." I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "Moses and I are finished." I looked away. "Rachel, I know." She wiped her eyes. "I know I don't deserve another chance." That was the first honest thing she'd said. Then she reached for my hand. I moved it away. Her face fell. "I loved you," she whispered. I looked at her. "I loved you too." She waited. "But that doesn't mean I can go back." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" Because while she was speaking, I finally understood something. I had spent months trying to get back to the life I lost. Now, I wasn't sure I wanted it anymore. My father had given me the company. The board had accepted me. The man responsible for my accident was facing justice. Everything I'd thought I needed was finally within reach. Except the one thing I had once believed mattered most, Rachel. She walked away. I let her. And I thought that was the end. I was wrong. Because that night, Moses called me. His voice was broken. "Ekab," I listened. "I need to tell you something about Rachel." I closed my eyes. "What now?" There was a long silence. Then he said, "She wasn't honest with either of us." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "I found something." "What?" He hesitated. "She's seeing someone else." I said nothing. Moses continued. "And Ekab." His voice cracked. "I think I finally understand what she wanted from both of us." The call ended. I stared at the dark screen. For the first time, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt relieved. Because sometimes the person you thought you lost was actually the person you needed to lose. But I still hadn't learned the hardest lesson. Moses hadn't called me just to talk about Rachel. He was about to ask me for something that would change our friendship forever. Moses called me again the next morning. I almost ignored it. After everything that had happened, I wasn't interested in another explanation. But something in his voice the night before had stayed with me. So I answered, "Ekab." "Yeah? I need to see you." "Why?" He went quiet. Then he said, "Because I owe you the truth." I agreed, but I didn't tell him something. I already knew enough to know that whatever he wanted to tell me wasn't going to change what had happened. We met in the same cafe where Rachel had once told me she still loved me. Moses was already there. He looked terrible. I sat across from him. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he pushed an envelope across the table. "What is this?" "Read it." I opened it. Inside were messages. Rachel's messages. Not to me. To another man. Dates, times, promises. Things she had told me were never happening. Things she had told Moses were never happening. She had been telling both of us different versions of the same lie. I closed the envelope. "I already know." Moses looked surprised. You knew? I didn't know everything. I looked at him, but I knew enough. He lowered his head. Ekab, I'm not angry at you. He looked up. You should be. Maybe I should. I paused, but I'm more disappointed that we both allowed one person to destroy something that took years to build. His eyes became wet. I thought you hated me? I did. He nodded slowly. I don't anymore. That was the first time either of us smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind people give when they realize something important almost disappeared forever. Our friendship. A week later, my father called me into his office. He didn't bring a folder this time. He didn't bring lawyers. He simply stood by the window. It's time. I knew what he meant. I walked toward him. Are you sure? He turned around. You've been through enough. I've been through enough to know I'm ready. He smiled. Then he placed his hand on my shoulder. For years I thought protecting you meant keeping you away. He paused. Now I understand that protecting you means preparing you. That day, I officially took control of Meridian Crown. Not because I was my father's son, because I had finally learned what it meant to carry something bigger than myself. The boardroom was full. The same people who had once discussed my future without me were now standing when I entered. Victor was gone. The investigation continued. The shares he had tried to manipulate were frozen, and the people involved in the scheme were facing charges. But I didn't celebrate, because there was something my father had taught me long before I understood it. A company can recover money, it can recover shares, it can even recover from betrayal. But once you lose the people you trust, money can't buy them back. A few weeks later, Moses came to my office. He stood at the door. You're really doing this? Doing what? Running the company. I smiled apparently. He laughed. You know what? What? You're still the same idiot I met in university. I laughed. And you're still annoying. He walked inside. Then his smile disappeared. Ekab. Yeah, I divorced Rachel. I stared at him. He nodded. I couldn't live with what happened. I leaned back. How do you feel? He thought about it. Free. That answer made me smile. Good. He looked at me. Do you still love her? I was quiet for a moment. Then I answered honestly. I loved the woman I thought she was. Moses nodded. And now? Now I know the difference. Neither of us said anything after that, because sometimes closure isn't getting the person back. It's finally understanding why you shouldn't. Months passed. The company grew. My father stepped back from the day-to-day operations. I took over more responsibility, and slowly, the boy who had once hidden behind his mother's surname stopped feeling like someone running from his own life. But there was still one thing I hadn't completely dealt with. Rachel. She tried to come back, not once, several times. She sent messages, she called, she even waited outside my office one afternoon. I finally agreed to see her. She looked different, not because she had changed, because I had. Ekab, she said softly, I made mistakes. I nodded. You did. I was scared. I know. I thought you were never coming back. I looked at her. You didn't leave because you thought I wasn't coming back. She looked away. You left because you thought I wouldn't matter when I did. She had nothing to say, and for once I didn't need an answer. I stood. I hope you find peace. Her eyes filled with tears. And us? I shook my head. There is no us anymore. She nodded, then walked away. I watched her disappear through the glass doors, and strangely I felt nothing. No anger, no revenge, just peace. That evening my father called me. Come upstairs. I walked into his office. He was standing beside an old photograph. It was me as a child. My mother was beside me, and my father was standing behind us. I looked at it. I remember this. He smiled. You were 6. You were already rich then. He laughed. I was. Then why did you hide me? His smile faded. You remember the kidnapping attempt? I nodded. That was only part of it. I looked at him. What do you mean? He took a breath. The people who tried to take you weren't random. I felt my chest tighten. They knew who you were. I stared at him. They knew about my shares? No. He shook his head. They knew about the company. Then he looked at me. And they knew that one day you would inherit it. Suddenly everything connected. The hidden surname, the distance, the accident, the boardroom, Victor, the message. The years my father had spent keeping me away. He hadn't been ashamed of me. He had been protecting me. I looked at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to grow up knowing who you were, before the world told you what you were worth. That sentence stayed with me. Because for years, I thought my father's decision had robbed me of a normal life. Maybe it had given me one. The next morning, I walked into the company without security following me. I didn't need them. Employees greeted me. Some called me Mr. Pierce. Some simply called me Ekab. I preferred the second, because before I was an heir, before I was a CEO, before the company belonged to me, I was just a boy who wanted to be loved for who he was. And somewhere along the way, I had learned something money could never teach me. People will disappoint you. People will betray you. Some will choose money over loyalty. Some will choose comfort over love. But that doesn't mean you become bitter. It means you become wiser about who you give your heart to. I lost Rachel. I almost lost Moses. I nearly lost my life, but I didn't lose myself, and sometimes that's the real victory. Months later, Moses and I sat together outside the university we once attended. No boardroom, no lawyers, no security, just two old friends talking about how strange life had become. Moses looked at me. "You ever think about what would have happened if you never woke up?" I smiled. "All the time." "What do you think?" I looked ahead. "I think I would have missed everything." He laughed. "Even the bad parts?" I nodded. "Especially the bad parts." He frowned. "Why?" "Because without them, I wouldn't know what the good parts were worth." We sat there quietly, and for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what remained. My father, my friend, my future, and the life I was finally choosing for myself. If there's one thing I learned from everything that happened, it's this: never confuse someone's betrayal with your own worth. Rachel leaving didn't make me worthless. Moses falling for her didn't make our friendship meaningless, and the people who tried to take my father's company didn't make me weak. Sometimes life takes people away from you because keeping them would cost you more than losing them. So if you're watching this, and someone has betrayed you, ask yourself one question: are you really losing them? Or are you finally being given the chance to become who you were supposed to be without them? And if this story made you feel something, tell me honestly in the comments. If you were Ekab, would you have forgiven Rachel, or would you have walked away for good? And what about Moses? Would you have given your best friend another chance after what happened? I want to know what you would have done. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves emotional billionaire stories with betrayal, romance, and unexpected twists. Because sometimes, the person who breaks your heart isn't the person who destroys your future. They're simply the person who makes you realize you were meant for something better. And that was the lesson I had been trying to learn all along.